So this seems to might have been the so-called Patient Zero, not the other movie that I also commented on recently, but the I'm assuming I don't know if it's literally the absolute original. Because with movies, there's a problem, right? Like there's a lot of zombie movies which are sort of which sort of touch on the issue. The brain that most zombie movies, which is brain dead, like supposedly the zombies themselves, that's a problem. You know, as in they're not intelligent. These other movies, on the other hand, although of course they sort of take away from with what zombie movies could be about. Anyway, this the Outbreak, yeah, Outbreak is interesting. So I obviously watched the newer epidemic movies first, the more popular uh, recently, certainly. Um, the more popular Soderbergh movie, Contagion, which they both use these common words, I suppose. Anyway, still interesting. I think they both use fictional germs as well, if I'm not incorrect, in Contagion. I think. Actually, today I think that there was some sort of encephalopathy, yes, wasn't it? So not really sure. Maybe. Anyway, yeah. It's been a few months since I've seen it, obviously. So actually saying that, I think it might have been a whole year. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, the point is it's interesting, and it's potentially even more interesting because the wife of the supposed protagonist doesn't die early on from the virus itself, which, you know. So in a way, yeah, it's certainly more interesting. It's interesting that they have, parallel jobs. He's more in the field, and she just changed her job apparently to the job he had previously. Apparently, I'd like to think of it as my job, etc. Yeah, and it has some humor as well, but I don't know. I know, I suppose they try to lighten the mood, but when you have such an outbreak, they really went full on trying to display the pure horror of the victims, but it's a bit strange. I mean, before they mentioned the name, some fictional name, I thought it was Ebola. I mean, it seems very similar to Ebola, it's hemorrhagic fever and such, but somehow it's not. Hmm. Well, anyway, of course, 100%. Deadly, huh? I'm not really sure if that's possible. By the way, yeah, one thing I don't think people generally mention when they say that more deadly viruses and bacteria, etc., are not likely to spread is the fact that, of course, well, unless I mean, well, there could even be human cases, possibly. Not sure if there are with Ebola specifically or other hemorrhagic fevers, but there could be either human or other sorts of animal cases where, like most bats are immune to viruses, etc., but they still host them, which is why many are transmitted from bats. So yeah, that's one thing though that they do not quite. I mean, yeah, they do have ecological habitats, I suppose, but then with tree felling, etc., they go around. They don't generally go all over the world. I guess that's the only difference. But yeah, as the movie is showing, it's possible, of course, to transport them. Yeah, the point is that you cannot really say that humans won't help spread it around because well, that could even be immune humans among other animals. That's probably, I mean, there's immune people with the current in the current COVID outbreak. So it's not like it's a novel concept. I'm not sure how likely it is to have immunity in some cases when it comes to really deadly germs. Haven't seen the stats on that, but it's still theoretically possible. So even with cases like Ebola, it's not really, yeah, you can't say it will always be localized. By the way, I seriously hope they really don't deal with any such cases like they did at the beginning of the movie. That would be the stupidest, most psychopathic reaction ever possible. Yeah, seriously hope that didn't happen for real. Donald Sutherland, as usual, plays quite a psychopath. By the way, despite saying this, despite saying that it is potentially more interesting than Contagion, yeah, it doesn't begin as interestingly, though. I don't know why they chose to begin with lots of shooting and such. Because it's. I mean, that's reasonable if it's a war movie, but it's not. I mean, sure, it's that's the context of the beginning, but for a movie about a virus, it's a bit idiotic to begin like that. I mean, Jacob's Ladder began like that, and then went on to not be like that as a comparison. But then again, the whole movie is about, PTSD, about the war, etc. So sort of more contextual. But this isn't quite. I mean, I suppose you could say war helped it spread, and indeed, the flu of 1918 was spread by World War One. But as a movie, though, it's a bit okay. It didn't last long, only a few minutes. It is still, though, it's still, sets off from the wrong footing, sort of, and considering beginnings should be ideally interesting. But anyway, yeah. And yeah, they said that the kidneys are practically annihilated. So I'm assuming everything that happens because the blood is full of stuff, I guess. Hmm. Not very sure that's usually how. Okay. Um, Also, it seems like it's not explicitly said, but shown that it's transmitted not only through water, i.e., the spitting the monkey did, but also through blood, presumably, because the guy got infected after the scratch. Yeah, and yeah. By the way, as was mentioned at one point, you know, um, the incubation period matters a lot in this case. Just 1 day. This is the problem with the current pandemic. Yeah, in at least 2 weeks. So theoretically, if everyone in the world just stays isolated for 2 weeks, pandemic will end. And now people cannot possibly ever do that, can they? We're not talking even about absolutely everyone doing that, just, the ones that are likely to have been in contact. No, they cannot possibly do that. So of course it needs to go on for years. The thing is, this movie is being a bit contradictory here. So, at one point it said it's not airborne, but I mean, what exactly would they mean by airborne anyway? Airborne usually means aerosol particles which are transmitted from coughs or even while speaking, etc. In other words, that could have been possibly transmitted when that guy took off his helmet because somehow he's freaking out. I have no idea how he could freak out about it specifically, only to potentially get infected, by the way. Like, if something scares you so much, you don't just get it. get the most, get as vulnerable as possible for, to the thing. Yeah. So it's contradictory. So at first it says it's not airborne, and then of course that there's that thing in the cinema where the guy's coughing. Yeah. But yeah, this disease is. I think it's even more uh, scary than the one in Contagion. I mean, they didn't have. It wasn't hemorrhagic as far as I remember. This is absolutely hemorrhagic. Just absolutely terrifying. Man. Just absolutely. But that's the thing, right? Ebola indeed isn't airborne, I think, from what I remember, which is exactly what limits its spreadability. So this is very similar to it, except it does seem to be airborne, as shown in the cinema. Otherwise, if you know, that's the thing with unless I'm incorrect here, Ebola spread through. Never mind, I'm not entirely sure. Forgot suddenly, but anyway, yeah. But yeah, later they actually realize it's airborne. I guess they just assume it. But then again, I mean, even if they just realize, then how come no one was infected when they just, so easily took off their masks at Zai, it's strange. Also, the thing when the camera followed the air vent. Hmm. Do you reckon cruise ships just happen not to watch this movie by any chance? Like, seriously, man? They have the worst air systems ever. And somehow they want to go in as soon as possible again. And people are so absolutely fervent about buying tickets once again. It's the most unbelievable thing, honestly. Now, this movie does have something, certainly, that Contagion doesn't have. Well, I mean, it also doesn't have something, at least so far, in the sense that it doesn't have Jude Law's character in Contagion, isn't someone trying to sell something that claims to hear this and that, which is very realistic. But so far, there's nothing of this sort here, nothing that parallels it. Alternatively, though, what it does have, and Contagion doesn't, is mm, roadblocks. It's, I guess it's sort of interesting to see and think about the possibilities of what could, like, in reality, obviously, in the US, in this pandemic, this hypothetically happened in the US, yeah, in this movie. So, but realistically, yeah, not only were there no roadblocks for COVID, there weren't even lockdowns. So, much, much more laissez-faire than this movie depicts here. Sadly, um, not sure if this would be the time when Jerry Brown or Schwarzenegger was in. I forgot. Anyway, yeah. So obviously, this sort of has, like, I guess, parallels with what some countries did, but certainly not. China seemingly did this for COVID, and it seemed to work. I mean, I don't know if it did this specifically in terms of barbed wire, and I mean this was pretty extreme, admittedly. In this movie, they're really testing out the most extreme version of it. I mean, a helicopter shooting on a car until it explodes in flames isn't quite very, it would be totally counterproductive, really. But yeah, lockdowns on the other hand, Anyway, yeah. What I was wondering though at this point here is, you know, at the 1 hour mark here, 1 hour 7 minute mark, yeah, they're still tracing the source, patient zero, but or host as they call it. I suppose there's a host and a patient zero, but anyway, what I don't get is how exactly this will be helpful at this point. If a whole town is infected, then there's no point, right? If though no one else is infected outside that town, then there's no point in seeking out the host either. Although, well, I suppose it could help in this specific situation, but they still don't know, I suppose. Yeah, if the host is still out there, then I guess it could still be infectious. That's the thing. Yeah, so I guess. Yeah, I can say, it could still be helpful. Yeah, I answered my own question. This has quite an ending. With regards to, I have the antibodies joke. Yeah, I don't think any other movie ended with the word antibodies generally. So that's cool. But otherwise, it's sort of a conventional, stereotypical Hollywood movie with all the, helicopter fights and whatnot, and the arrest of the villain, etc. Very stereotypical. Yeah, Contagion wasn't so stereotypical, was it? I don't remember a clear, defined villain, protagonist, etc. A love story, because of course there's death and there isn't resurrection, but there are lies which exist in real life. So this is more of a stereotypical story in a way, more militaristic. So in one way, it's not as enjoyable because of the insistent militarism really from the beginning to end, pretty much. But on the other hand, it's not just brainless, totally. There is something behind it. There is, but even if it's very Manichaean, sort of, villain, etc. And but I don't know. Realistically, Contagion is more um, realistic. That is, in a way, even though it's not really. I mean, it's the time scale with which it happened and everything. But otherwise, I mean, of course, this used an anti-serum, as opposed to a vaccine. And that's, I believe, is the plasma, which, although the word wasn't said once, so yeah, plasma also was used in the COVID pandemic, though, but I don't think there is. I don't think it works so perfectly like this seemed to do. Otherwise, I'm not sure why they didn't produce absolutely lots of it, and so that no one would die of chance. I don't think though. It's either a production issue, obviously, or it doesn't work as perfectly as depicted. Maybe both, I guess, both reasons. But assuming mostly doesn't work perfectly. I think I have read of people having it and still dying. So yeah, I mean, of course, after all, not everyone with. I mean, people have antibodies. People have varying level of antibodies, and whether they solve the problem or not is variable, depending on a variety of factors. So yeah, in the sense, it's not as clear cut. But then again, just like the issue with the military and whatnot in this movie, it's very simplistic. kind of like the virus. They claim themselves as so simplistic. So that's the thing. So it's not quite, you know. But yeah, military is very brain dead in this movie in a way, isn't it? You know, so weapon, but protection and all that. Oh, bomb an entire town. Yeah, I'm sure that works totally as if somehow, yeah, like there were really no cases in Boston, and there's a huge distance between Boston and California. How on earth did no one else get infected along the way? It's unbelievable. So honestly, though, it's I mean, as a premise, it sort of stretches belief, you know. But by all means, I mean, the military can be a villain pretty much, pretty easily. But still, I mean, just it's it's still not very realistic. As in, it's not realistic to solve the problem. But I'm sure the military would absolutely love it if it was realistic. But if it did that anyway in the current COVID pandemic, it would lay waste to the entirety of the country, which will of course presumably defeat the purpose, unless of course the purpose was just a bombed out continent. But anyway, yeah, it's strange, isn't it, how this happens? Like mm, it's quite a so yeah. Remarkably, no one has suggested that, and this pandemic, no one that I've no one that nothing that I've read anyway suggested that. Well, obviously, it's a movie premise, but you'd think with everything that's happened in the last year and a half or so, that someone well, I mean, well, at the very least, got inspired by this movie. Not sure how that would work at all. Nope, it would not work with it. Okay, well, what would you do then if there's multiple places there, so you keep on playing, sort of, oh, bomb this and this and this. Oh, great, it bombed everywhere. Yay. Oh no, now it's in governmental offices. Great, bomb government. Yeah. Oh no. N- Now, oh, it's kept on spreading to the towns. Even after we did that, well, no, we cannot bomb those towns now because we already bombed ourselves. Great, thumbs up. So yeah, I mean, as a premise, it's very simplistic and unrealistic in the sense, it's illogical essentially. Of course, not much. It uses brute force. It's connected to the military is usually logical, but I mean, it might work with human enemy combatants, not so much so microscopic organisms, obviously. Not at all. Yeah. So it is quintessentially a movie, I suppose. Yes. So in the sense, I could see why there was a need for Contagion. It is more realistic, although still a movie ultimately. Still, overly dramatic as a movie, but it's overall still more realistic than Outbreak. Saying that Outbreak then is more realistic than zombie movies. As it happens, I mean, what do you reckon? They're just zombie movies. Of course, they wouldn't be realistic. But honestly, most zombie movies just do not even make the effort of even bothering to make anything remotely realistic at all. I mean, at least Shaun of the Dead made a comedy out of it, but most zombie movies are perfectly serious still, despite the premise being absolutely ridiculous. Although, by all means, they're just, if you have a metaphor of society, etc., then yeah, it might work, but still boring in my opinion. So this was interesting, just very relativistic, so generally not as yeah, but interesting stuff.